So, since our last conversation, but now it's Wednesday and I haven't had time to practice, and that's pissing me off that I haven't had time to practice, and I'll edit that out. Um, because I want to be able to step into the morning, step into my job, step into a conversation, sit into a conversation, walk into a conversation with that in mind. So what I actually started doing, and so I know I'm rambling here, and I'll bring this all in, is started having my recorded podcast, my recorded conversations, with two sets of threes. And so I actually go into the conversation with, um, in this conversation, so I'm talking with the guest. In this conversation, I want you right now, and I don't even give any prep time for this. It's like right here in the moment. Give me three words, three adjectives, and I'll kind of give them some hints and some guidelines as to what you want to experience in our conversation. So excitement, whatever that is. Um, and then I go back and I say, now give me three emotions that you want to experience as we go through this conversation. Do you want to be calm? Do you want to be insightful or excited or whatever those emotions. And even if they could only get one out, that's
Yeah.
quite all right because most people are in tune with, well, how should I feel? How should I feel as a
You
result of
feel
this
something? We're
uh,
talking. Why should I
about this
feel?
conversation, right? So it's kind of new for them, but it's kind of new for me. And so, and then so I've only done this twice so far since we had this conversation last week.
Holy,
Um,
that's a lot.
well, again, I talk with people every day. Um, so nothing good, nothing bad. It's just that I want to put it into practice. And so I want to, say, if we were to, how do you want to experience this conversation? And so, well, somebody will say, I want to make sure that I get all my points across. Okay, cool. We both write it down. I want to make sure that I speak with clarity. Cool. We're going to write that down. And so, what I'm thinking, if there's power in this, is that once we write it down and we make it a reality, but we're no longer, so once we go into the conversation, after we have these realities written down on paper, they're not in our conscious thought, but they're moved to our subconscious thought so that we're engaged in conversation. We're present. I'm hoping, I'm hoping at this point, because I don't know if it's all accurate, this is that what we've written down, what they want to experience, I want to make sure that my points are made clearly. Okay, cool. And then we go back. Do you felt that you made your points and were they clear? I said, yeah, I think we did. I think they were. So it's gone pretty good. Like I said, I've only done this twice. And the emotional part, not so much yet because people are unsure of how to feel about the conversation, other than I make them comfortable, and they're calm in the situation. So I have been able to build that rapport with my guests. So I wanted to kind of communicate that to you, is that in some way, shape, or form, I am trying to exercise and put into practice what you've taught me or what you've communicated to me, um, in terms of what I'm doing. And
I
it may
want
not be exactly as you
that. No,
told
I
it and as you instructed me, because it was more centered and all that kind of stuff. I'm much of the thinking person, and we've had that conversation. I want to be able to utilize my brain power, if that even makes sense. Use my brain power, knowing and trusting that everything that you talked about is true regardless. If it's true, then it's true. If I've got to force it to be true, it's not necessarily true. It's something I've got to maybe magically make appear, and that's not what I want to do. I
yeah.
want it to be authentic and real, but I'm trusting that it's true. And like I usually do, I'll be quiet.
Yes. So I Sarah and I were talking about this too. Um, I'm going to say a lot of things. I hope they all land as they should. I know they will, but you tend to take something and receive it in what I would describe as an elementary student style, meaning I don't know how to do this. This is not comfortable for me. And then you immediately translate it into a PhD course.
Is that your reflection of me?
Well,
I'm
so
going to
here,
share that on social media and see how that lands.
I say this lovingly because what I mean by that is I took you through the first step, which is you starting to understand the concept and feel it in your body. Whether you could understand one fraction of 1%, right?
Mhm.
Something shifted and unlocked for you. And then you leapfrogged to exactly where I would love for you, us as a society to get, which is, oh, hey, this is how you have a genuine conversation. We open up about, hey, what am I feeling? What do I want to get out of this? Maybe I'm feeling a little nervous right now, but I really want to feel calm and relaxed and get to a great place and have a bond come out of this conversation in whatever that is for each person, right?
Right.
And so you took what you're like, I don't know, this isn't doesn't feel like I can't do this. And then what you did was take it and do the complex part, which is turn it into how we as humans should actually interact. You go into this setting, say, okay, I want to use this to help people actually us communicate
Mhm.
in a really valuable way, which is let's talk about what our goals are. Let's be transparent. We create then a subconscious agreement between the two of us that this is how we want this conversation to go. Okay, we've had that conversation. Now, I don't have to have trepidation and remember those things because we've had that exchange and we're both holding space for each other to have this conversation unfold and achieve our goal. So, to your point, then I release it into the subconscious to make sure that it just happens and I surrender to that experience. So that's what I mean by you said, I can barely keep my eyes closed. This is all I can do, right?
Right.
And then you went and like did what I would think people would take months of coaching to be able to get to, oh wow, I could do this in a conversation with people and set them at ease in this environment. So that's what I mean by I'm not capable, and then I am way more than capable and can do more when I just trust myself that I'm gonna use the information I received in the way that feels right for me.
But that also means I missed probably some key steps along the way.
Well, I can identify that for you because it is also what I do.
Okay.
I tend to jump into the deep end, right? And it is a constant challenge for me to work back from, whoa, okay, not everybody can just be in that new space. And
Base, right.
perhaps that's a big part of why we get along so well is like we just jump to that deep end and it's like, yeah, I don't know what it is, but give it all to me and I'll sort through it, right? And figure out what lands for me. And
Right.
so I just I resonate with that deeply because that's exactly what I do. And you're right, not everybody can do that. And there is real value in going through the practice and fine tuning it. And I just heard this the other day, which is really resonant for me, which is, yeah, fine tuning my instrument, right? Like,
Mhm.
oh, the more I practice doing this, the better I'm going to get at holding that space for that person, the better I'm going to get at them feeling comfortable to share whatever real emotion is there, right? That in the beginning, they may not be able to express that, but I'm going to get better. But the first step is trying.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was what it was like. It was well, and it wasn't that they didn't want to experience an emotion. It was like I'm unsure about which emotion I want to experience. And so while I typically say, I always use my background as an icebreaker. So if you were sitting on the floor playing with, your son or daughter, what would you want to experience? What would be that emotion? Joy, happiness, satisfaction. Whatever that is. That's why I always keep this. Maybe I need to brighten the background, but I do like the Lego component because most people, um, have an affinity for play, and they would, if given the opportunity, they would take 10 minutes to play with something, outside of just a fidgeter, something to keep their mind occupied. They really want to just put the stress away. And so if I could put them in the frame of mind that says, okay, this is going to be a good experience, this is going to be a fun experience, this is going to be a comfortable experience, Typically having a conversation with another adult cannot doesn't lend to that all the time. So I said, well, what do you see behind me? You know, and you know, if we were to, sit down and not everybody's a builder, not everybody's a Lego builder, but what game would you play? Um, how would you
Right.
experience that game? What would be the emotions that you would associate with that? And sometimes seeing that seeing the conversation from that perspective does help people go into a conversation, especially a conversation with me, where in the Question Guy podcast, we can get into, you know, things that really hurt, not physically, sometimes physically, but not
Right.
always physically, were unsafe places for people to be in their past. And
Mhm.
to go revisit that is
Mhm.
not that I want to call it therapy, but sometimes it's a challenge. And so, but if they feel that they're safe in that conversation, then they're willing to talk about it. And I don't want to
Absolutely.
be a therapist. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to be a therapist at all. I just want people, to join me in conversation because that's where my healing was. And I want other people to feel the same.
Healing happens in community. Healing
Right.
happens in community, and a community can be two people. Community can be yourself as well, because you yourself are a community. And there's biologically, we're built to actually do that in the presence of others, right? Like the tears having more protein in them because they roll down your face slower when you're experiencing sadness, not just wind tears, right?
Right.
Is because they're meant to be seen and witnessed. And so you holding space for that allows people to experience that. And so the more and more you do that, the more and more you're going to craft the ability to be able to hold that space that makes it safer and safer and safer for them to dig into those things. And that's beautiful. And you're right. It's not a therapist, and it is a version of therapy because that's how we heal. It's in community.
Right.
And I just have to say this because you said it, and it's like people should would love to create. I don't remember how you said it. Something about creating space for play, and I'm like,
Well, I do. That's what my
we
background's
have
all about.
to.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have to, right? Like it isn't about would love to, right? It's like, no, actually, how do we think about like this is a key component of therapy, healing, etc. is like actually playing. Like draw, color, build, run, whatever it is that feels like play to you,
Mhm.
do it. Like watch what it changes in your life when you say, nope, this is something I do every day is I find space for play to express myself. Anyway, so you said that and I was like, I have to say that because it's like I would love to be able to create space for play. And it's like, no, 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 like wouldn't love to. Like we need to shift that mindset to like, no, this is it's like breathing, it's like eating, right?
Right.
Like how do we get back to thinking about play as a key building block of being human?
And I hope with that talking about because we're not going to play on the podcast,
Right.
but I want to give them the feeling, the emotional experience of this should be enjoyable. And so, what is enjoyable for you? Let's tap into that memory for just a second, for just a minute, and say, okay, because some people do come into this very unaware, insecure about what it means to have a conversation, because typically people who go as guests to a podcast, come in with the mindset that, oh, I got to spill everything I know about every
Yeah.
question I'm going to be asked, and that does happen. I've had some, quote unquote conversations that were purely a monologue on the guest part, and
Yeah.
I give them that space, but I kind of more and more as I do this, I want to take it back and say, okay, remember, there's another adult here at the table. Let's have that conversation. Let's really, because without the dialogue, and if it's only a monologue, then you're, although that's cool and that's good, you're really missing out on a bigger aspect of what this could be. Because for me, I went into this because the connection wasn't important. It wasn't because a million people were going to listen, although that would be really cool. Um, it was because that connection I was making with the individual was important to me, and I was hoping that it was important to the other person.
Yeah.
Um,
Right? You're setting the tone, which is different than I'm here to just be a platform for you to talk about whatever you're doing. Instead, like I actively want to learn and experience this with you. So that becomes more of a dialogue and a conversation rather than, great, here you go. Right? Like, and people get, when you open up their passions, people like sometimes can't help themselves. I'm
yeah,
included
yeah,
in that.
yeah, and that's happened. Yeah.
Right, but also that feels different than somebody coming on and just having kind of a speech prepared, if you will, of what they're going to say. Yeah.
Mhm. So I wanted to, with all that I just said, one,
Right.
thank you. Two, it did land and it did land in a certain way. And so being able to share the fact that and it wasn't just that I felt confident about the day. It wasn't, saying, "Ooh, I need to put this into practice," not just in conversation with somebody else, but when I show up for work, when I show up for the hike in the morning. And so when I show up for my own hike, I don't want it just to be a grueling, 10 miler or a 13 miler or whatever that number would be. I want to go and say, this is a triumphant experience for me because I'm going to hike with 30 pounds on my back and be a total moron on this trail because nobody does this except for, endurance athletes. And I don't rate, you know. But I'm doing it for a purpose. And so I want to go in with that idea. And I'm also doing it, 0 dark 30, which in military time means there's no sun outside. Um, and so with all that, I still need to be safe, but I want to enjoy the experience and all that kind of stuff. Um,
Right, and your mind creates the experience. So if you go in saying, "Oh, this is the worst thing. I don't want to do this today." Yeah, you might mind shift in the experience. Or you could go in and say, "Oh, even if you don't always believe it to begin with, oh, I can't wait to get out there. I can't wait to feel the cold on my skin. I can't wait." Right? Like, tell yourself that's what you're excited for. And like, then the experience of the hike feels different already before you even start. And like that.
and that's what I want to experience. I want to experience that change. I want to say, because eventually there's going to be that starting line that says, I got 2,200 miles to go. Now, not every day is going to be good, but I want to go in there with, you know, this is going to be good. And I want my mind to drive my body to
Mhm.
experience that.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like, I think of those, and I can't remember if I've told you this word before, but I look for glimmers.
Mhm.
Glimmers are like the things that I experience. And so, okay, after my last hike, find something that was really awesome that came because I had done the hike, right? So, oh, so awesome. My body felt so alive. Or I had the most invigorating conversation because I was so alive, right? Like, what are the glimmers after each of those? And as you start to build up your repository of glimmers,
Mhm.
you start to then orient on, look at all the positive that comes out of me doing this too. So it becomes a little bit easier to start because you're not thinking about, oh, I'm always so tired, or my legs hurt, or my hands are chapped, right? Like all the negative side. Instead, look for the glimmers at the end, and that'll help the beginning too.
Well, it is because I got a band-aid on my,
No.
my finger is chapped. But you're right. And so that
Right.
actually um, does help. But again, I'm just kind of getting started with this.
Absolutely.
I'm showing up, but now I'm showing up with intentional words.
Look at that.
And what? What?
Couple days.
So
Awesome.
yeah, in a couple of days. And so I felt, and this is going to be a little bit more challenging, that uh, you know, wanting to raise $1 million, wanting to hike the Appalachian Trail, wanting to make a change in the space where the conversation of suicide is being discussed, not from a mental illness perspective or the trauma that's incurred, but from the perspective of healing in the short time between then and now, I felt that it was doable. Versus it just being something that I think or dreamt could be doable. The the thought was, the confidence was that this is actually doable. Now I'm just at that glimmer where it's that's a good thought to have. So
Yes.
I'm not fully immersed in the fact, oh, this is totally doable. We're going to
Yeah.
do it today. I'm going to, raise this, or I'm going to have this conversation. Or, the first Envision Speakers Series that you're going to be part of is going to land really cool and people are going to be all excited. I'm not at that level of confidence yet, but between now and, 30 days from now, definitely
Yeah.
that could change.
And can I'm going to plant another seed for you.
Okay.
Two things. One, can you be excited about the journey to do that rather than the destination? Can I build my confidence around I have a little bit more information about how to bring this into the world, and
Mm.
I'm excited to learn more. So everything I do is building and learning rather than I have to get to this point. Because honestly, once you arrive, then what?
Well, the fear is not being able to get to that point at all. And
Right.
so,
So, how do you erase that fear? By instead saying every day,
right,
learning and growing towards that. And so I am doing it, not I'm going to do it. And I don't have to be confident. I'm learning and growing through it. And I am doing it today.
right. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of the new model, the new thinking model for me was to kind of step in there with today's level of confidence means I'm going to have this to do and I'm going to experience this as an emotion around it. Putting what you'd said earlier in practice, the only
Yeah.
PhD way I know how to do it is to actually do it in a small thing, but actually do it.
Yes. Yeah. You're doing it, right? You
But
are
that's
doing it.
doing it for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
However it hits for you, right? Like that's the thing is none of us are ever going to do it the same, but it's like anchoring into like I'm doing it right now by having this conversation. It's creating a ripple.
right, right. And
Mhm.
so and so those were the two things I wanted to communicate to you was that I tried it and this is how it this is how it works for me. And two, it allowed me to feel a level of confidence. And again, real confidence, not this like it was a baby step and it felt good. No, I actually felt that this was a doable thing, versus it being only a fun dream to have.
Thank you. I am incredibly grateful to hear your reflections because it helps me continue to do the things that I feel called to do. So thank you
Cool.
so
Cool.
much. Yeah.
The last thing I need to ask is, can I share this stuff on social media because this
Yes, you
actually makes
do.
good,
I know.
good,
I was like,
good,
good thing
good
we hit
clips.
record. Yeah.
Well, good clips, and that was actually number three. I did have to ask permission because doing so would be inappropriate.
Yeah.
Um, is to take these clips and put them in as either shorts or 5-minute segments on the channel, and then share, very much your authority in this space, um, so that people recognize it. Yeah,
Thank you. I'm
yeah,
working on that myself. So thank you for that.
all good, all good.
Ah, thank
That's
you.
that's what I had. So I don't know if you wanted to add to add to the conversation, or add a bit more to the conversation that says, Keith, good work or something like that, or
Yes, you're doing amazing, Keith. If that didn't come across, I am like blown
no,
away
it totally did.
by your ability to like it's so fascinating. You like and I'm so encouraged and so exuberant for you because what I feel what I feel when we talk is that there's like this cracking facade that's like been what you thought you were for a really long time. And I say it's cracking because I see what's behind that. And you may present with, I'm not capable, or all these things, these negative things that have been conditioned into you. And I
Mhm.
don't, most of the time when we're talking, I don't feel those. And then it's like, oh, I have to be safe. So I'm going to bring that back to the forefront. I'm
Right.
like, oh, I love that it's cracking for you because it's so beautiful.
Well,
What's up?
well, let me tell you real quick. So I'm going to share this and this got shared out into the world. So about a year and a half ago, maybe, I was again still connecting with people, and this is one of those conversations that really didn't go well, was not recorded, but it was really kind of me kind of figuring things out in the space that I was in. And the gentleman that I was having a conversation with, kind of, and he was a coach. He was kind of this I don't even know what you would call it, the spiritual guru,
Okay.
mindset, you know, international coach type person. And he drew the metaphor or the analogy, I'm not quite sure which word I should use here, of me being a car that wants to get to a destination, but didn't have an engine, steering wheel, or four wheels. So basically, it was empty. So it and he didn't call me empty, but he said he drew out this metaphor of this car that you want to get there, but you don't have the tools to do it. But then he never stepped in and said, as we're having this conversation, he never followed up with another conversation to say, hey, I guess because he knew I wasn't going to pay him. And so with that,
Yeah. You read between the lines.
and I may have if he was actually nicer to me, but he
Right.
wasn't exactly nicer in the way he approached my lack of ability or my emptiness. And so that was just an
Yeah.
interesting conversation.
Yeah. I
But
can
that was a
imagine.
year and a half ago.
Yeah. That's true. Right. So much growth since then. And that's unfortunate that there are people like that out in the world that are trying to help other people because that feels like the opposite. But
Yeah.
if it did something to push you, then maybe it's the right
I
thing.
went to the next conversation.
Yeah. I was like, this isn't it. So
Yeah, pretty much. And so I had to go to the next conversation and the next conversation. And a thousand conversations after that, I landed in a conversation with you
yeah.
and, Marlene and Sarah.
Yes. Well, I have to jump to another call, but someday I want to tell you that that story is exactly why I'm driven to do one of the components of what we're trying to do, which is make it easier to find the right person for you. So,
Cool. All right. Jump on
yay.
your other call.
Amazing. Thank you, sir. Have a great day.